Welcome back to Tired Old Queen at the Movies. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. We have some great merchandise listed below. And now let's go see the Tired Old Queen at the Movies, Steve Hayes.
Ooh, Johnny! I chose 1954's Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, directed by Stanley Donen and starring Howard Keel, Jane Powell, Russ Tamblyn, Jacques D'Amboise, Tommy Rawl, Julie Newmar, and practically every other dancer at MGM at the time. This is a robust, fun show. It's sort of like Here Come the Brides, that TV show that was on in the 70s, which was probably taken from this movie. It was in CinemaScope. It's in Technicolor. It is glorious. It has Michael Kidd choreography. Adolph Deutsch wrote the music, which got an Academy Award. And they didn't put a lot of budget into this movie, MGM, because they had all their money sunk into a remake of Rosemary starring Anne Blythe that they were putting out, and Brigadoon, which was coming out at the same time, neither of which made any money, and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers was up for Best Picture of the Year and 3 or 4 Academy Awards. The scenery is so beautiful, but the scenery is all painted backdrops because they didn't have a budget, and Donen so wanted to go on location. He wanted to film this whole thing in the Rockies and have all the mountains, and they couldn't do it, so they had to do a lot of painted backdrops for it. But it still looks wonderful. It's like Black Narcissus, and who cares? It still looks beautiful.
You know, you're mighty good-looking boys. Well, you are, every last one of you.
This movie has 7 brothers who are up in the mountains. You know, it's in the Old West. And Howard Keel is the oldest brother. He decides they need a wife. They need a woman around. So he comes off the mountain and goes into town.
I'm going to bring me back a wife.
Well, that's a fine thing, I must say.
And he meets Jane Powell. Perky, pretty, gorgeous voice, Jane Powell.
Like a daisy in the sky.
And they get married. And she falls madly in love with him. And he doesn't tell her that he's got all these brothers.
It's indecent, if you ask me. One lone woman with 7 scroungy backwoodsmen.
When they get to the cabin, out come these, 6 redheads that are all the brothers, burly guys. And Jane Powell was, no bigger than a minute. Anyway, so these guys are just looming over her. And she proceeds to take charge. And she starts to educate them and so smooth out their rough edges.
After you.
They say, how we're going to get a girl. Well, she goes, and she sings this song, Going Courtin', and how you have to approach the girl, and then you've got to make her the most interesting thing in the room.
Going courtin', oh, it sets your senses in a whirl.
And they teach them how to do this, and they dance, and the dance numbers in this are great, and the guys are so gorgeous. So eventually they read this story about the kidnapping of the Sabine women.
The Sabine women, or Sabine women, or whatever they call it.
And they decide to head down into town, and each of them kidnap a bride. They load them into this wagon, and they take them back to the cabin, and there's the posse's after them to rescue the women, and an avalanche happens, and the girls have to stay with the guys for the whole winter in this cabin in the middle of East of Beyond. So during that time in the winter, at first they hate each other, and the men love the girls. The girls couldn't care less about the guys, but they really do. They do all these numbers where, he is kind of cute. I do kind of like him.
Which of the boys slept in this bed, do you suppose?
Dorcas Galen.
So in the spring, when the posse comes to save the girls, they don't want to be saved at all. And they have a massive wedding, and everything ends up happy ever after. And that's the musical. Howard Keel, this was his favorite movie of all the musicals he did. He loved this one the best because it's got a great story. It's robust and fun. And the dances, Michael Kidd was such a wonderful choreographer. The dances are so masculine. The guys are just so great. And the girls' numbers are so sensitive and wonderful, and they're all so pretty. When they made the costumes, Walter Plunkett made the costumes, he made them all the girls' costumes out of old antique quilts, so that they, just like they would up there. And Jane Powell had one of the loveliest sopranos. I've always been addicted to her version of It's a Most Unusual Day. It's one of my favorite numbers she ever sang in a musical. And her voice and Howard Keel's voice blend beautifully together in this. Russ Tamblyn said that he really wasn't a dancer when he went into this, but Michael Kidd knew that he was an acrobat and could do all these flips and things. And so he's had him do all these major flips. And he said, "You're in this number." So Russ Tamblyn said, and I became a dancer as a result. And of course, Tamblyn went on to do West Side Story and Tom Thumb. And oh my gosh, he did everything. Jeff Richards, who is this hunk with the next oldest brother, he couldn't dance his way out of a bag. So they always put him in the back. They'll have him coming up for the chorus numbers, and then he kind of disappears in the back. And it was very frustrating for Julie Newmar, who had come out of Broadway. And she was a really good Broadway dancer, but she was stuck with him, and he couldn't dance, so she kind of got left out of a lot of the bigger numbers and the more intricate dance numbers.
To ensure the survival of each brand new arrival.
Jacques D'Amboise was a major ballet dancer at New York City Ballet, and they borrowed him from the ballet for this, and he was just lovely. And Tommy Rall had been in so many musicals and danced with Bob Fosse and Kiss Me Kate, and just he brought a lot to the table. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of working with Terrence Mann. And I was in Man of La Mancha with him. Oh my God, I got to watch Terrence Mann do Don Quixote and sing The Impossible Dream every day. That was a dream come true. And then he directed me as the modern Major General in The Pirates of Penzance. And when we did that, his father-in-law was Jacques D'Amboise. He's married to Charlotte D'Amboise, wonderful Broadway dancer and performer. And Jacques drove up, he was in his 90s, and drove up to see these shows. And none of the kids that I was doing these shows with really knew who he was, but I knew who he was. And he was this very elegant gentleman with beautiful silver hair and standing off in the corner. And I went over to him and I said, "Oh, Mr. D'Amboise, it is such an honor to meet you." And he said, "Oh, you're so kind. What a lovely thing to say. Isn't this a marvelous place? Isn't this production absolutely marvelous? I'm so happy to be here." And I just couldn't get over how self-effacing and just so genuine and elegant he was. And it was a great honor to meet him. It was one of those things that I will take with me always.
Sun's getting shinery to spotlight the finery.
Spring, spring, spring.
The MGM musicals were starting to gradually fade out, and this was the beginning of the end of the major studio ones, but this was one of the last big spectacular ones. And whenever you talk about this movie, whenever I bring up this movie, everybody will say, "Oh, that's my favorite MGM musical." It's just because it's got such a good heart. It's just about love and romance, and you're just going to have such a good time, a lighthearted, fun time seeing Howard Keel and Jane Powell and Russ Tamblyn and Jacques D'Amboise and Tommy Rall and Jeff Richards and Julie Newmar and all the rest of them in Stanley Donen's 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
Let's all go to the lobby.
I said, "Hi, I'm an old gay, this is a nosegay. Tired nosegay at the movies. Yes, I know. Send me no flowers." Okay.
The popcorn can't be beat.